There's no place to put the turf?
Not 124.
I don't know that there's a place to put any.
Oh, but you've seen the map.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's really the...
At the end of the day, I think the certificate that may issue may incorporate requirements that the town has already established. And the question is, do you, at that point in time, does VP, the applicant, have the critical mass, have the infrastructure, have the return on investment necessary to warrant going forward under the auspices of the certificate that the deciding board may issue? And just as much as you're saying you don't like to, answer hypotheticals, but that is a hypothetical. They may say you need to conform and comply with, say, 7/10 of all of the town regulations. And what's the impact of that? And if you say, well, once I apply 7/10 or the following sections of the law, the local law, then I'm reduced to a certain mass, and I can only locate X in this particular area. And that's a business system. But that's what your certificate warrants, then that's what you got. Okay? I mean, there's so much we don't know.
Correct.
There's so much we don't know. But one of the things we do know is the potential impacts that you already are aware of by way of other wind farms that BP is operating. And I'm just kind of circling around on that to answer, get back to some of your other questions that you want responses from the town. We need to have that information just as much as we would need to have you disclose that even in the long form or draft environmental impact statement. What do you think it is? You tell me, because I don't know. I don't know. So once we have that, we'll be able to better assess it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I apologize, but I have an appointment that I couldn't switch in Watertown, so I have to leave now. I didn't want to just get up and leave without apologizing.
You don't have to drive through Pulaski to get there.
I looked at the weather this morning, and I wouldn't have driven through Pulaski this morning. So I apologize, but I had to sneak
I'm
out.
glad you were able to attend. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask, when you give a list of the parts of the law that you would
Those sections of the ordinance that
court elect to modify,
they would request that they not be, part of your application is we don't want,
Right at this, when we put the PSS in, what it's basically going to say is these are provisions that we could be asking the siting board not to apply.
Okay.
It's not definite at that point. I think
you're essentially asking for relief not to have those imposed.
potentially.
Yeah.
And my question is, when you put in that list, could you state your reason for, or some additional, is it because you don't like that there, or because it violates some sense of common sense or common good issue? Could you give us some logic why you would like to have that part of the law?
We will have to do that eventually in terms of
Not as soon as
at this juncture. I mean, I certainly, can give you the list. I think that some of those items may fall away, and I'd hate to spend time and energy, articulating a rationale for why it doesn't apply, only to have it not even be there a month from now.
Okay.
Mr. Harris, you say you know, Mr. Chandler says he knows our town. But yet, in your information that you send in your previous notification that you just sent to the town board members, you still have a town board member on there that has been on for 8 months. I'm not sure you're well aware. My notification I was elected in November came to me under another name. So you might want to update your phone.
Thank you.
We're at that point in our agenda. We're at the general discussion of the PIP and any other issues that may relate to it. So I'm going to, in essence, open the floor for that general discussion. I know that Dick McSherry is very focused on timelines, and there's a scheduled timeline here that has been discussed in part as to when this process needs to be completed and at what point can an application go in. So that's part of the general conversation. I'm going to open the floor up to just that conversation relating to the POC. If anyone has any comments, questions, observations.
I got a comment.
Okay.
It has to do with the PIP. In a revised PIP, you mentioned that you have various approaches that you've used to do outreach for the community and that type of thing. Open houses, you specify the use of project offices, public education events, local advertisements, newsletters, and what have you. Now, I was wondering about another kind of outreach that you have. I will call it a shadow outreach, and it wasn't particularly mentioned in the PIP, but it has to do with lawsuits. And specifically what I'm talking about is BP's involvement in a lawsuit in the town of Lyme back in 2008. Now that lawsuit, I don't know if you recall, it had to do with concerned landowners, concern about strict requirements of the new law that Lyme had adopted and had to do with the wind generating facilities, whatnot. So it was an issue that would obviously have been very important to BP. In Exhibit 2 of your PIP, the revised PIP that you had, you said, and I quote, it says, in 2007, BP retained the services of Trieste Associates and the company's team of public outreach experts to assist the planning events to educate and engage the public as part of this effort. BP assisted a local group of wind supporters in the towns of Cape Vincent and Lyme to form a group known as Voters for Wind. So you're indicating right there in your PIP that you had a connection to the Voters for Wind organization. And there's another connection here too with respect to that particular lawsuit. And this comes from an organization of Trieste Associates. And it states right here, this is, for example, Trieste Associates has helped citizens organize groups such as Voters for Wind in New York that educates the public about the benefits of renewable energy resources. And Voters for Wind filed and won a lawsuit against the elected officials who voted to prohibit a wind farm in the town of Lyme. Now that was, that quote came from my CERTA-sponsored school curriculum done by the Windwise education group. So here it is, they're saying here right up in front, Trieste, by the way, is a consultant of yours, it is paid by BP, saying, hey, we have a case history here, this is what we do, here's a method for dealing with municipalities who adopt laws that they feel are too restrictive. So the question I have is, did BP, did you have any involvement, did you admit to any involvement in that lawsuit that went on in those days? And on another issue, one here more recently is another lawsuit that occurred here in the town of Cape Vincent. Just prior to your submission of this whole application process, which was September of this year, we had a lawsuit that went on with a number of bloggers in this town. Now, having already established that, I guess plaintiffs in the lawsuit that came out here with the bloggers, it says plaintiffs have been involved in a civic organization known as Voters for Wind. So here it is, we have another lawsuit, Voters for Wind, which is an organization that you say in your PIP that you have supported and what have you. They're filing a lawsuit against a couple of bloggers that we have in our community. And the interesting thing was the timing of that. In other words, that lawsuit occurred just prior to the time you submitted your application here. So if it's a case of trying to reduce or minimize some of the critical comments or something that might go forward with this type of thing, it was probably a pretty good approach and what have you. There's another connection that concerned us, is that when you took a look at the law firm that was representing those plaintiffs, Voters for Wind, was a law firm that BP has used in the past, Waters. And they have an office right in Houston, right in the same building that you have an office right there. So the question is, has there been any involvement, any financial involvement supporting these lawsuits? I mean, they are voters for win. They've identified that they are, voters for win. You have identified that you got the group together. I might also add, when you go back to the, we've got copies of your lease agreements, and right in the lease agreement it says, there's a clause there, it says, shall assist and cooperate with you folks, BP, in getting any kind of these projects forward in the permitting. And it also said that that you shall assist with out of no out-of-pocket expense, which tells me that, hey, anything they go forward with, whether they're these lawsuits, hey, if I were them, I'd say I would hope that you would be paying for this because you said right in the contract, they're contractually bound, that you're going to support them with respect to no out-of-pocket expense. So my question is, have you been involved? Have you spent the money? Have you supported these groups? Have you promoted this kind of activity?
We are here to discuss the project. You
This is
introduced
the
this
PIP.
line of questioning.
This is the
Under
PIP.
the guise of public outreach, it has nothing to do with public
Yeah,
outreach.
well, yes, it does.
If you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. but I
Wait a minute,
really
it
think this
does.
pretty far
It is the
off.
PIP. You've made the connection to an organization that has filed lawsuits against this town, and has filed, town of Lyman has filed lawsuits here. We also know that they have agreements, contractual agreements with you, that they have to support you, and that you in turn are going to support them financially. And I think that when you go through this, and I look at this PIC, and you have all this nice little stuff where you've had brochures, you've had advertisements and everything else, and you fail to mention the fact that your connection to some of these activities, I don't think is fair. I don't think, and it might be legal, but as far as we are here in upstate New York versus maybe Houston, Texas, it doesn't pass our sniff test. I just don't think it's ethical, and by the same token, I will throw into that package the whole idea of you're soliciting funds around here or making donations to groups that you're meeting with this whole process. The timing is lousy, as I've said before. Yeah, I've got one.
Well, can I go?
Is there any constructive input into what we could be doing differently in our public outreach besides the workshops and the advertisements and the newsletters?
Yeah, don't get involved in lawsuits. Be open and honest.
Aside from the posturing that I thought we weren't going to have today, we're going to actually talk about maybe constructive
This was other.
involvement.
This was other. This was PIP. There is a connection.
I'd ask you, John, this may be a case of first impression for you, to do what any lawyer would do, be respectful, I'll take it under advisement, and deal with it appropriately. It chills the atmosphere. Clearly, it chills the atmosphere in which we now sit with you and Richard, and it's difficult sometimes for many people here to look at what you're saying collectively with a high degree of credibility. So that said, take it under advisement, but know that there were 2 lawsuits. There's one pending right now involving individuals who are in the town of Cape Vincent, and that does chill the atmosphere in terms of engagement and involvement. And if there is involvement, if there is direct or indirect involvement, I would commend you to take a good look at that and determine how best to deal with it.
Maybe you and I can have an offline discussion.
I think that-
You can just give me the information.
I think
on
that
the
would be-
cases that are
that would be fine.
concerning.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay, so we'll do that this week.